In this video, we're going to go over storing transactions with dates. So there's a couple options that the Solver Cloud and private host application allows for. One, you can store a transaction to a period. You should think of this sort of like budgeting to the GL. You budget to the period 2021-01. Now, if you want to get more granular, you want to budget to a specific day, then you need to budget to a date. And then finally, another way that you can store dates in the Solver Cloud and private host applications is that you have a transaction and you want to record a date to that transaction or part of that transaction, such as document date. So you're going to be storing to a date attribute. This video is going to go over how to configure the Solver Cloud and private host applications to store to these various different types of transaction dates, and also go over the little nuances and things that you need to be aware of when configuring a report to do that. So here on the screen, you guys can see a pretty simple planning template. And right here at the top, if we click on the report, we get layout editor. You can see that for this row 9 right here, we're filtered for our accounts 40010 to 40040 of the corporate demo model. We're doing exactly the same thing down here on our row 14. Now the difference is that on the columns in this section right here, we're looking at the period dimension. So here we're going to store a transaction to a period, so 2020-01 as an example. And then we're also going to store a document date associated to this transaction that I'm going to store. And then over here in column H, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at a date. So what I want to happen over here in column H is that when I run this report, I'm going to select a day. I'm going to select today's date, and it's going to give me the entire month. And then we're going to store transactions to a date. Now this is different than storing to an attribute of data type date time, like what we have right here with document date. So let's go ahead and run this report, and let's take a look at what it does. So here you can see we get our one column for the period parameter, and here you can see that we get the entire month of April for our date parameter. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in some values, and we're going to see that storage works. We're not going to worry about this date storage at the bottom. Let's focus strictly on period storage. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save data, and everything works properly. Let's go ahead and modify these numbers. We can delete a number, and we can see that everything with date storage is working as we expect. Now, this time I'm going to add a document date. So we're going to go ahead and type in 1/1/2020. No difference in our process here. All we've done is added an additional document date, and then we're going to go ahead and hit save data. What's going to happen now is that we're going to error out. We get this error message saying error converting from data type date time from character string. It's a slightly ambiguous error message, but if we scroll through this a little bit and come down to the bottom, we can see the error in this section right here. So even though I have typed in the value 1/1/2020, you can see here what has been found is 43831. This is not a valid date time, and therefore the storage is erroring out. But why is the 1/1/2020 getting converted to 43831? This is actually an Excel property. Excel does this under the hood, so you don't see that. 43831 is actually the serialized version value for this date right here. And the reason that Excel does this is it allows you to do functions off of this, such as the year formula, the month formula, or anything like that. That is the reason for this serialized number, and that's ultimately the reason why date storage is failing. So what we need to do is we need to convert this value into something that the Solver Cloud application wants to accept, wants to store back to the database. We have a couple options. We can do a MMDDYYYY, or we can do a 4Y2M2D format. Using an Excel formula to get storage to work properly. So let's go ahead and click OK on this error message. Let's come back to design, And before we go into the formula changes, let's just take a quick look at the data settings. So here I'm going to select monthly amount. We're going to come to budgeting, and you can see here that's a very basic form. It's storing back to the monthly amount. I have my dimensions right here, and then I'm also storing to the document date, which is referencing cell F9. I have store unchanged cells enabled, and I like to set the use ignore flag on the row. I like to set this property, even though in this case I'm not using it at this time. If ever I'm trying to troubleshoot a template, then I would just want to add the ignores to help me debug templates faster. What I want to do though is I want to make a formula of this that is in the string mmdd YYYY. We can do that using like a text formula, or I can create a string in the 4y2m2d format. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the 4y2m2d format, and I've gone ahead and done that here in column G. So let's go ahead and make my text black. And we can see here the formula in the upper right, in the formula bar. Now there's an important note here. So this right here is the formula that you need to convert any date that the user types in right here into a 4y2m2d format. But you also have to take into consideration the chance that the user doesn't type a date into the cell. In that case, you need to provide a date value because the SQL date time attribute requires a value. So if a cell is left blank, blank is an invalid date time, so you need to pass off something. In SQL, the date equivalent to a SQL null is 1900-01-01. So you guys can see right here I've added an if case. So if F9 is blank, then I'm going to insert this value. Otherwise, I'm going to run this formula. This will allow me so that I don't have to type in a date on every cell. It's only going to store back dates to the cells that I type into. So let's take a look at this. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back to run. We're going to run this report, and we're going to go through those same actions. So let's go ahead and just make sure our report works properly. We get a successful save. Let's go ahead and modify these transactions again like we did before. Everything saves properly. And then this time we're going to go ahead and add a date. So I'm going to go ahead and add 1/1/2020. Again, this was the formula that errored out previously, but this time you can see that we're storing back to 2020-01-01. Let's go ahead and hit save data. So we errored out again, and the reason for this is I forgot to update my budget settings. So let's come back here to monthly amount. You can see here that we're still referencing F9, but we actually now want to reference G9. So let me go ahead and make this quick change. And then let's go ahead and rerun this. And then this time we're going to type in our date. And then we're going to hit save data. We can see that the date was saved back properly. So let's go ahead and click OK. The report will rerun. You can see that the number that you typed in comes in properly. Let's go ahead and quickly update this. Let's go ahead and add another date as well. You can see that our formula is flowing through. Here we're not typing in any value for this account 40030. Let's hit save data. Everything stores back properly. And then finally, one more action. Let's go ahead and delete this number. It's going to return back to our 1900-0101, which is our value for an empty date. Let's go ahead and hit save data. And we can see that everything saves back properly. So in this example, what we've gone over is we've gone over storing to a period and then also storing to an attribute that is data type date time. The key takeaway from this is that you want to have an additional column that's converting the user's typed in value to a 4y2m2d format like you see here, and then also take into consideration that the user might not type in a date, so you want it to default to 1900-01-01. One other thing that you need to do, because this cell right here is not mapped as a budgeting setting, you want to make sure that you come to the Solver Reporting tab, Report Properties, and make sure that you have unchecked Protect Non-Input Cells. Because this is not an input cell, the input cell is technically just this cell right here. So let's go ahead and take a look at our date storage. So this is not to get confused with date attribute storage. This is storing a transaction to a date. Now up here we stored to a period. So we stored to the period 2020-01, but under the hood every transaction must be stored to a date. So this transaction that we typed in right here got saved back to the first day associated to the period 2020. If you're on a fiscal calendar, then it'll get saved back to the first day of the calendar month associated to your fiscal calendar. Now let's take a look at date storage. So this concept is very similar to period storage, except I want to choose the date within a period that I'm going to be storing a transaction back to. So in this case, instead of referencing the period dimension like we have up here, you can see that we are referencing the date dimension. So here we're going to store back to a specific date. So when I run this template, and as you can see here on my column filter, when I run this template, it's going to run for the entire month that I've selected, and then I want to store a transaction to April 1st, April 15th, and April 20th. And all three of those transactions will fall under the period 2021-04. So let's go ahead and run this template. We'll go ahead and choose run. Let's go ahead and type a transaction in on the 1st, the 15th, or it looks like for this template I've only brought in the first 16 days. So let's go ahead and do the 10th and the 11th. So let's go ahead and hit save data. So you can see here that the storage was successful. Let's let the template rerun. Now that the report has completed, let's go ahead and scroll through the right, and we can see here that the values that we typed in are appearing on their respective dates. So here we can see the 1 is for April 1st. We got the 10 and the 11 over here. So what we can do is let's go ahead and run this report for 2021-04, and we should expect this report to return $22 now for the account 40010. And so in this case, you've stored 3 transactions at the day level, which can get summed up to the period as shown here. We drill down on this, and we can see these 3 transactions right here that you have generated. So in summary, the difference between period and date storage, the only real difference here is to make sure that you bring in the date dimension. The date dimension is found in the module that you're storing data back to. If you scroll down to the bottom, expand on more fields, you'll see date. Make sure you bring date in and remove the period dimension. This completes storing transactions to various different dates. Please check out the Solver Academy and the Solver support site for additional information on the Solver Cloud and Private Host application.